Good morning, guys. Today we're going to go through hips, hamstrings and lower back. The more we get into this, the more you'll see how interrelated those areas are. If you've got hamstring tightness, it's going to affect the way that your pelvis rotates and how your lower back is positioned and vice versa. So key areas to work on as an athlete and otherwise. Going to need a lacrosse ball or a peanut ball, something like that, but otherwise I think that's it for this one. Starting off in a downward dog position, trying to create that A-frame. Don't worry if those heels don't touch the ground first thing in the morning, you're going to be quite tight. Just pedal the feet one by one and try and push the head through the shoulders. Right leg extends up, squeeze your glute, take a big inhale at the top before exhaling and bringing your knee as far up towards that right hand as you can. Place it down and just enter into a low lunge. Spend a bit of time here, probably feel that on that left hip flexor. Squeeze the left glute before easing down to it. Even take a twist if you need to. Think about dropping that left knee down towards the floor and easing your elbows down towards the floor as well. You might find that that's a little bit too intense. By all means, stay up off the floor, but if you can, just going to head down, and that stretch transfers over to the right hamstring. Spend a little bit of time here, just deep breaths, easing into it, opening up the hamstring before taking it round to your left hand side now with the hands. So you're still keeping your right knee pinned out to the right hand side, getting a bit of rotation through the spine, focusing on your breathing in this position. Bring it back round to center. Again, take another twist in towards your right hand side, either with the left hand or left elbow still in contact with the floor. Bringing it back up and coming out of that low lunge. Notice I'm straightening the right leg out before pushing back into that bent knee low lunge position. Each time you bring it back, you're focusing on squeezing the right hip flexor, staying in control of the stretch. Think about squeezing your quad as you straighten that right leg out. And I'm pulsing back and forth between the two positions. You can think about lowering the body into it, but some of you aren't going to need to do that. It's just a case of stretching out that hamstring whilst staying engaged with the quads. Toe can point up towards the ceiling, that's completely up to you. You can get a bit of ankle movement in there. And then use the breath, take a little pause if you need to in that hamstring stretch. I want you to think about the way your pelvis is rotated as well as you enter that stretch. So is your bum poking out or is it tucked under? And how does that affect the stretch? Again, I'm just going to go back into my low lunge, take another twist. One of my favourite stretches, this one. So back into plank position, sit back into downward dog, take a big exhale there. On your inhale, we're going to think about lifting that left leg up this time into extension. Squeeze the glute, stay nice and tall on the arms, on the shoulders. Exhale, bring the knee to the chest, and then bring that left leg to the left of the left hand. Spending a bit of time trying to really rotate into that left hip. Take a little rotation in towards your left, thinking about lowering that right knee down to the floor, relaxing that right toe. Take your time in bringing the elbows down to the floor, if at all. Just pushing that left knee out over the toe, getting some movement on the ankle as well whilst in this position. For bringing those hands over to the right hand side this time, seeing how far away from that hip we can bring the body whilst retaining that natural breath. Fill the stomach with air, flare the rib cage, and then big exhalation. Walk it back round, take a twist in towards your left hand side again. Opening out that left shoulder. So bring it back up from that lunge, and then we're going to transfer into that hamstring stretch. Easily or quite gingerly on that first one before starting to increase that depth. Bring the chest down towards the knee if you can. Token point up towards the ceiling. Squeeze the quad, make sure you stay in control of that stretch. You're dictating these stretches, we're not simply hoping for the best. And again, initially not spending too long, moving dynamically from one to the other. The more we get into it, the more we can hold that stretch. Take a few breaths there in that hamstring stretch. Think about poking your bum out. Think about squeezing your hip flexor. Bringing that head down to the shin before transferring back forward. One last little twist from our low lunge position. Okay, bring it back up into standing position, and then we're just going to find a squat. thinking about moving around on the ankles, moving around on the hips and the knees. If you are struggling to find a squat, then just place a couple of books or a plate or whatever you have access to under the heels, or even hold on to something in front of you for support. Again, thinking about that tension in the hip flexors in the squat, pushing those knees out, creating torque in the hip joint. So we're not just sitting in it, we are pulling ourselves down into that squat. That's why I like to do a few of these overhead raises with the arms, because I'm thinking about a nice straight line right from the wrist all the way down to the hip. Nice line all the way down the spine. A few little movements out on the knees, make sure those toes face forward. So for this one, I'm going to use the peanut ball. You can just use a lacrosse ball or a massage ball. Hey, the top's coming off now. Just to show you where that lacrosse ball is going. So I'm running down the centre of the spine. I want to start in my thoracic, so that's the upper mid spine. I'm going to bring my hands over my shoulders and try and just assume a little bit of a glute bridge. See, I'm taking as much weight on the roller or on the ball as I can. If I find a spot which is particularly tender, then I'm going to just breathe there for a little bit, flare my rib cage. Because notice when you flare your rib cage, when you bring a big breath in through the diaphragm, your spine is just going to move over that ball, and those tissues, that fascia, is just going to get smashed by the ball and just release any tension, hopefully, over time. Notice that small little sit-up motion. I'm not pulling my head forward, I'm just supporting it there as I go into a bit of flexion. Once you've done that, you can just transfer that ball down a couple or a vertebrae and do exactly the same here. Again, once you've done that, take it down a notch. It's another one of those exercises where it feels like the breath can just be taken out of you. So you've got to be conscious of that and try and just focus on relaxing the body into it. But you don't want to be hitting the spine itself. You'll know the difference. You know when it's a harmful pain and when it's a case of just gritty teeth, relax into it. Kind of counterintuitive, those statements, I know. Really like these sit-up motions just because we can start to open up each individual vertebrae. You get a few little cracks and pops in the spine as that air escapes. The further down the spine you get, the harder it's going to be to take all your weight on that roller. So don't worry if you can't go up into a full glute bridge, because it's going to be pretty intense. So last couple of times, just working our way down into the lumbar. That's where you have to be particularly careful, especially if you've got any history of lower back issues or pain. So have a little move around with the shoulders, with that spine if you need to. And then we're just going to use the lacrosse ball now. So a tennis ball works well. This is where the massage balls come into their own, because it's hard to really pinpoint certain areas with the roller. So what I'm doing is placing this ball just outside the spine, but inside the scapula, so in that little gap of muscle. Again, you don't want to be on the bone, so you're kind of in the just off to the side of the spine, and focus on putting that shoulder into flexion. So notice how that ball, or the tension you feel on that ball, changes when you put that shoulder into flexion. You'll feel those tissues just moving underneath it, and you'll also feel how the tightness in the upper back is going to affect your overhead mobility. Why do we need overhead mobility? You know, that swim really hinges upon your ability to stay in that nice streamlined shape. So this is why you need to get into that area of tissue. All those muscles and fascia, connective tissue, to just glide over each other as they should. So a little move around, and then we're going to transfer over to the other side for your last little movement of the day. Well, except training, that is. Again, like I said at the start of the video, we're just seeing how the spine, or your movement in the spine, can affect the rotation of the pelvis. That in turn can affect the tightness of your hamstrings. It's all interrelated, especially because you've got that central nervous system running down your spine. This is why it's such a key area. And you'll find that once one area is freed up, the others can start to move more effectively. Often if you think you've got tight hamstrings, the problem is not the hamstrings themselves, but actually your tightness in that neural network that runs down the spine. So it's a key area to always work on. That's it for today, guys. Well done. Have a little stretch off or a little move around, and I'll see you back here tomorrow.